Welcome to Good for Bitcoin, a weekly show recorded live every Friday, where we recap the top events of the week and talk about everything that is good for Bitcoin. If it's built on Bitcoin, then it's good for Bitcoin. Let's get started.
Content shared on this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It does not constitute financial, investment, or legal advice. The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guests and do not reflect the official policy or position of any other agency, organization, or company. We encourage you to conduct your own research and consult with a qualified professional before making any financial decisions.
All right. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Good for Bitcoin. I am Kate. I'm going to be your co-host today, along with Longstreet, and we're also joined by Brandon. This is our first Good for Bitcoin show in 2 weeks, and it is a stacked show. There is so much to get into today. But just if you're in the space, make sure to retweet it out so we can get some more people in here. Let's get into it. There's so much. So let's start with last week on Leather Lounge. Sean and I had the pleasure of talking with Blaze. He's the founding contributor of Granite BTC, which is a Bitcoin lending protocol. What a phenomenal episode. He's an absolute brain. You can tell he's like super smart and knowledgeable about this because the way he explains things, you can really understand it. So Granite is it's a Bitcoin lending protocol. It's going to be using sBTC, and it's a way to be able to take advantage of holding your Bitcoin and taking loans out against it. So the way that one thing that Blaze was really able to explain to me that clicked with me was it's almost like a line of credit. So as long as you're maintaining a healthy debt to loan value ratio, you don't have to make repayments on a schedule. So I thought that was really a great way to think about it. But Sean, I would absolutely love to hear about your thoughts because you really did a good job at asking amazing questions to Blaze.
Thanks, Kate. Yeah, he was a fantastic guest, and we were rapid fire throwing questions at him left and right, and he was just gracefully and eloquently answering each one. So it's definitely an episode worth listening back on because DeFi is exploding and people are going to want to make their Bitcoin productive. And so Granite aims to do that. And the release of Granite also hinges around sBTC, which is just around the corner, which is a wrapped version of Bitcoin on stacks. So it brings smart contract functionality to your Bitcoin. So Granite will support people being able to provide loans for other people, like providing liquidity, so earning for loaning out your Bitcoin, or you can, put up your Bitcoin as collateral and then pull out a loan that way. So we had a lot of questions, and you mentioned, how does balancing the loan work? What is the loan to value ratio? How does it work with an asset that is so volatile? Because it's not like you're putting your house up for collateral. This is Bitcoin. It is very volatile. It moves up and down a lot. So we talked a lot about the nuts and bolts of it. How does it work when the value goes up or down? And Blaze has, the mantra, never sell your Bitcoin. So, and this is what we see a lot of other people with that are heavy on the assets. This is what they do. This is what Jeff Bezos does with his Amazon shares. He's never sold his shares, but you use that as collateral and pull loans from that. So we are really on the cusp of Bitcoin maturing into this store of value asset, and wrapped Bitcoin, sBTC, using this as collateral for loans is definitely the next step. So yeah, we really dug into a lot of details on that. Let's go back and have a listen for sure.
Yeah, definitely an episode worth listening to. And there will be a lot, I'm sure, to come out in the following months around DeFi. So Granite is definitely a good place to keep up to date on that. Let's get into Thanksgiving. Did you guys have a good Thanksgiving? Any fun orange pill conversations happening at the dinner table?
Brandon, I'll throw it to you first. Brandon's not unmuting yet.
Oh my gosh, rookie mistake. I started talking and then surprisingly, I did not have any conversations about Bitcoin on Thanksgiving. Although I did have a conversation about it with my father-in-law the day before, so maybe that counts. But I was talking to him about just the 21 million, right? Just like the capped supply and discussing inflation and just having like some pretty basic conversations about, the aspects of Bitcoin that many of us kind of take for granted and just, already kind of know on, in our like just, natively. So, yeah, just had a couple kind of brief conversations there, but nothing too crazy.
I have a bit of a funny story. I was actually at a ballet class the other night, and after the class, I was talking to a girl just chatting, and she asked me what I was doing for work, and I told her, "Oh, I work in Bitcoin," and she said, "Oh, is that still a thing?" And I was like, "Yep, it's very much a thing. It's doing quite well right now." And I was like, as far as we think we've come, and like how much momentum and innovation has come, there's still a long way to go. But yeah, it was a funny one.
Yeah, there was a lot of damage done through the SBF bear market era, which we are well far away from. But I think the question is, typically it is around Thanksgiving when everyone comes around the holidays and you're around people for a long time and family members are asking, what do you do? What are you into? Obviously, that's the time when these conversations do happen. But let me broaden the question to both of you. When you do have these conversations with someone who's like, oh, is that still a thing? Like, Brandon, you mentioned the 21 million thing. Like, how do you approach introducing someone to Bitcoin for the first time?
Yeah, I think generally there's still a lot of misconceptions. I've also seen kind of some news stories and stuff talking about this over the past couple of weeks about how a lot of people still think of Bitcoin as a dollar replacement, like as a cryptocurrency in the word, right? Like as a currency, and it's not really what it has turned into, right? It's definitely much more of a store of value, and especially when you compare it to Sean, you mentioned SBF and like all that stuff, right? Like the crypto casino, right? It's sort of separating Bitcoin from everything else. How I see a lot of other, non-Bitcoin cryptocurrencies out there is kind of, like almost like penny stocks, right? It's just like, it's so volatile in a, not in the same way that Bitcoin is. Like it's a gamble, right? It's almost like you're just gambling on all these other things, where Bitcoin, for me personally is, and I think for all three of us, is a, much more kind of stable, safer bet, especially compared to pretty much everything else that's out there. So for me, it's sort of separating Bitcoin from everything else, and then talking about some of the core principles of Bitcoin and relating it back to things like inflation and things like that.
Yeah, smart. I in my experience, people really don't understand the difference between crypto and Bitcoin, and that is a good place to start. You mentioned Bitcoin as being like a store of value, and I was reminded that this week it was Jerome Powell had a good point about, as someone asked him about, Bitcoin. Is Bitcoin a threat to the US dollar? And I don't know if you saw the clip, but he said, no, it's not a threat to the dollar. It's basically like, it's more of a threat to gold because it functions as a store of value. It's not as much a threat to the dollar.
Yeah.
So I saw, various takes on that on crypto Twitter.
Yeah, I think that's what I was thinking of is that conversation. But I just feel like outside of that, I've seen a couple people kind of talking about that narrative as well. But yeah, I think it's important to talk about that, and especially now, it's so much easier to have these conversations about inflation. Coming off of all the COVID stuff, like everyone had some vague idea of what inflation was, but now everyone really knows what inflation is because they've all experienced it over these past few years. So it's a real world problem now for everybody in pretty much everybody in the world. So it's much easier to kind of talk about kind of the problems and what the solution is, which is Bitcoin in our case.
Yeah, the finite supply. Well, Kate, do you want to move through, since we do, as you said, we do have a lot to get through. So
absolutely.
What should we start with?
Perfect. Well, before we get into that, I just want to shout out 300 the artist. He is one of our leather ambassadors. So thanks for being here. Very excited to have you on board the team. And thanks for showing up. Some product updates for Trust Machines .locker. The self-transfer feature is tested in live. So this just allows you to easily move your .locker identity to a different wallet or account. And if you want to do that, you just go log into .locker, my .locker, go to the wallet tab and click the transfer digital identity. And there you go. So that is a very useful update. On the leather side, you might have seen us very much teasing 12 days of leather. I think when I first started, Brandon mentioned to me, I had this idea for like a holiday campaign. I really want to do it. A month later, he sent me a doc that said 12 days of leather. Let's do it. So we've been working on this for a while now. But it's basically just going to be a 12-day celebration of all the communities, protocols, partnerships, and everything that makes Bitcoin so great and makes leather so amazing. So we're not going to give you any spoilers, but we will be dropping hints over the weekend. You're definitely not going to want to miss this. So turn on your notifications. It's going to be a very insanely fun week next week.
It's big. I mean, it's like Kate said, this is something that I have been thinking about and we have been planning for literal months. For me, this is the biggest sort of campaign that I have like personally kind of done like from the ground up. So it's been a multi kind of month process of coordinating with a lot of different partners and artists and so many different things. So we're really excited to be kicking it off. And no more spoilers, I guess, but it's going to be a very, very fun 12 days for everybody.
Absolutely. And even more exciting, Bitcoin has hit 100,000. Who would have thought? I think for me, the last couple of weeks, I've sort of like gotten the excitement out of my system. Like we've been so close and I'm like, we're there, it's going to happen. And then when it did happen, like a couple of days ago, I was basically just sitting on my couch and I was like, oh, wow, we're there. So currently sitting at 101,000. What is your guys' impression? What are your thoughts?
Brandon?
Yeah, I wasn't really paying too much attention, and I was watching a movie. I was watching Bad Santa, and midway through the movie, I checked. I just happened to like check Twitter, and 5 minutes ago, I saw like a post that was like Bitcoin hit 100K. So yeah, I was a little surprised. I think I talked about it a few weeks back how I actually didn't expect us to hit 100K so quickly. What do I know, right? But I didn't expect it to happen so fast. I thought we were going to be kind of idling around this like 98K range for just a really long time and never get up to that 100K point. And we've surpassed 100K again today. We kind of dipped down for the past couple of days, and we're back above it. So super exciting. I think it's just, it doesn't change much, I think, for the builders that are here and, for everybody that has kind of that long-term conviction. But I think it's still just a really, it's just a mental thing, right? Of like 100K is such a big milestone that everyone has been talking about for, years and years and years, right? So the fact that we have hit it and we've surpassed it and we're kind of steadily above it or right at it this whole kind of week almost is really incredible. And yeah, it's just a huge testament to all the work that everyone has done to build on Bitcoin and to build it up into what it is. So huge milestone, but we're not done, right? I don't think we're stopping at 100K. The question is, when 200K, when 300K.
On to the next one.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. The memetics around 100K are just huge. And that's, what was it? A couple of years, 3 or 4 years ago, it was decided like, all right, laserized to 100K, right? And we've reached that now. So what's the next thing? But I think the general consensus is that we are still so early in the bull market. There's still a lot left. Politically, there's a lot of wins behind the sails of the crypto space at large. So as exciting and amazing as it is, like you said, it's like, all right, let's keep going. What's next?
Yeah, just to point out a couple of tweets from the Leather account here. So we basically went from 16,000 to 100,000 in about a 2-year period. which is pretty impressive. And I think the fact that it is around 100K makes sat math really easy. I don't know about you guys. I'm so dumb when it comes to like calculating like sats and what like that equates to in terms of dollars and Bitcoin and everything like that. So the fact that we have this nice rounded number, 10 sats is 1 cent, at least for now, is really nice to be able to do that math in my head, because otherwise I am always having to search for it on Google and trying to find a calculator to figure it out, because it doesn't work in my brain for some reason.
Nice.
All right, let's get into it. First item on the agenda, we have public companies adopting Bitcoin. So these are companies that have really taken on a Bitcoin strategy or a Bitcoin standard in their own company. And I think it's good to just highlight what industry they're in and kind of just like show the range of industry players that are getting into Bitcoin. So the first one that we found was Semler Scientific. It's a medical device manufacturer. They're listed on the NASDAQ. And last week, they acquired 297 Bitcoin, which was about 30 million. And yesterday, they bought another 303 Bitcoin. And since adopting this strategy in May, their company's generated almost 80% from their Bitcoin yields, which is massive. They're now sitting at around 1,800 Bitcoin. And their CEO made a comment just saying, we didn't see a better alternative for our cash than Bitcoin when they were comparing it to stock buybacks or acquisitions. So that's a win. The next one we found was Rumble. It's a video sharing platform, and they announced their Bitcoin treasury strategy in November, like a week ago. And they're planning to purchase up to 20 million in Bitcoin. And their CEO was explaining that the company believes Bitcoin adoption is still early, but there's a lot of growing institutional interest, and it's really backed by an obviously crypto-friendly incoming administration. And he was emphasizing that Bitcoin, unlike government-issued currencies, is not subject to inflation from money printing, making it a valuable hedge and a strategic addition to Rumble's treasury. So you can just see that they're getting it. They understand it, and they're seeing that it makes sense for their companies. The next one is Jiva or Jiva. They're a CSE-listed company, and they have approved a $1 million purchase. Their CEO commented, we'll see a unique opportunity to strengthen our treasury with a resilient and innovative investment. The next one is kind of unique. It's Virgin Voyages. They are a cruise ship. I think this is owned by Richard Branson. And they launched like a $120,000 annual pass that offers unlimited cruises. But they're accepting Bitcoin as payment. And I'm not sure if this is a move to sort of attract like a new demographic of travelers, maybe those who are in the crypto community, working remote, not sure. But they are the first cruise line to integrate a crypto payment method, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I put this in under public companies. I'm not sure if Virgin is a public company. I think you're right, Kate. But thought it was definitely worth mentioning. And I also am not sure if they talked about or announced what they planned to do with the Bitcoin that they earned, if they just plan to kind of hold it strategically, or, if they're going to be selling it right away. But, it's almost at the point where 1 BTC will equal unlimited access to cruise travel. So we're almost there.
That's funny. The last note I had, Sean, this is something that you brought up that I thought would be really worthwhile to mention here. So there was a tweet that you had shared from CB Spears, and he basically made this comment that it's a warning that if Bitcoin becomes less active in the block space and underused, then miners will be less incentivized because block subsidies will dwindle. And then, he's basically saying in this scenario, Bitcoin might become stagnant, or people would start advocating for supply change, which is not good. And he argues it like moving towards centralized off-chain solutions instead of addressing scalability at like the protocol level kind of undermines the fundamental principles. So it's, while we're celebrating that, like, there's a lot of institutional investment, there's kind of like this concern that if Bitcoin is not being productive and not being used, miners are not going to have the the kind of like transaction fees and rewards and the incentivized to actually, maintain the network. So yeah, any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, exactly. Well said. It's a bit of a tomorrow problem. Like it's not an issue right now, but if you just play this out and keep thinking that the MicroStrategies and BlackRocks of the world are going to maintain more and more custody of people's Bitcoins, they will have more power over the network. And, we may be in some situations where there's collusion and forks happening. So it's not going to happen today or tomorrow, but somewhere down the road it might happen. So it's something that everyone needs to be aware of and we need to advocate for. Is as many people need to be using the chain and self-custodying as possible. Not everyone. It's not right for everyone. ETFs are practical for a lot of people, but we also need to enhance and enable the proliferation of lots of different holders. We need to not have just one BlackRock, not just one strategy. We need the Semler Scientifics and as many corporations as possible. So yes, we need it diversified and decentralized for as long as possible, because that will be an existential threat to Bitcoin as we know it.
Yeah, how I sort of think about it is there's like a lot of conversations a few years ago about like ESG Bitcoin and ESG Bitcoin being like valued differently than like regular Bitcoin if like that Bitcoin was mined cleaner, right? And corporations were going to value cleaner Bitcoin, and like that never really panned out, which I kind of expected. But it's almost a similar thing where you're going to value potentially self-custodied Bitcoin more than not self-custodied Bitcoin, right? Like the fact that I hold my own Bitcoin, I think has more value than the fact that BlackRock is holding my Bitcoin. I have that permissionlessness will have some sort of value. So I'm thinking about that for sure. But I'm also thinking about, just like Bitcoin layers in general, right? Like we see so much, transaction, mempool, I guess, fees and stuff like that coming from things like ordinals and runes and BRC20 and other activity on the L1. But I think over time, as Bitcoin layers keep getting bigger and keep getting adopted, Bitcoin layers themselves will sort of be fighting each other for, fees, and we'll see a lot of competition there as well. So I don't feel as concerned about this issue. I think there's definitely still a lot of competition, but definitely something to sort of keep an eye on.
Totally. Oh, actually, one thing I read today that is kind of related to this, Bitcoin ETFs have like the amount of Bitcoin in US BTFs have surpassed 1.1 million Bitcoin, which is more than Satoshi Nakamoto holds in his wallet. So that was just like a fun little statistic I found today.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy, actually.
Well, it wouldn't be a Good for Bitcoin show if we didn't talk about Michael Saylor. They bought a ton of Bitcoin in the last couple of weeks. This comes from a $3 billion offering of a 0% convertible senior notes to acquire more Bitcoin. So it was one purchase of 55,000 Bitcoin and then another of 15,400 Bitcoin. So their holdings are now at 402,100 Bitcoin, which is just mind-blowing. I think there should be like a poly market of how much Bitcoin they're going to buy every week. But we're going to play a clip for you because basically Saylor held this presentation with Microsoft's board. And yeah, there's a lot of like great information in here. When he talks about Bitcoin, it's just always really well laid out. But yeah, let's play the clip and then we can talk about it.
Microsoft can't afford to miss the next technology wave, and Bitcoin is that wave. Bitcoin represents the greatest digital transformation of the 21st century. It represents digital capital. The global wealth is distributed across assets that provide utility and others that preserve capital. But Risk is destroying trillions of dollars of that capital every single year. And investors are turning to digital capital in the form of Bitcoin in order to avoid that risk. Digital capital is economically and technically superior to physical capital, and it represents a revolutionary advance in capital preservation. The asset class itself is growing from trillions to hundreds of trillions of dollars, and it is backed by digital power along with political and economic power. It makes sense for Microsoft to be powered by digital capital. Bitcoin's the best asset you can own. The numbers speak for themselves. It makes a lot more sense to buy Bitcoin than to buy your own stock back or to hold Bitcoin rather than holding bonds. If you're going to outperform, you're going to need Bitcoin. And those bonds are undermining your options market and your equity liquidity. Luckily, you have an alternative. Public support for Bitcoin is surging, as is political support, as is support for the US Bitcoin Strategic Reserve, as is Wall Street support. And the President of the United States says, never sell your Bitcoin. That's why we're entering year one of the crypto renaissance. And you have a choice to make. Cling to the past or embrace the future. Divest billions of dollars and slow your growth rate. Invest billions of dollars and accelerate your growth rate. You've surrendered hundreds of billions of dollars of capital over the past 5 years, and you've just amplified the risks that your own shareholders face. If you want to escape that vicious cycle, you're going to need an asset without counterparty risk. What if you could buy a $100 billion company growing faster than Microsoft for 1 times revenue? What if you could keep doing it every single year? It's time for Microsoft to evaluate its Bitcoin strategic options. We've created an open source model. You can plug in your own assumptions. You can convert your cash flows and your dividends and your buybacks and your debt into Bitcoin. If you do that, you'll add hundreds of dollars to the stock price. You can create trillions of dollars of enterprise value. You can strip away risk from your shareholders, and you can prosper on the Bitcoin standard. So do the right thing for the world and adopt Bitcoin.
Pretty good.
Come on, Michael Saylor. I mean, he may be the best advocate. He's tenacious, and he does this. It feels like he does this for a living. He's full time, all the time, joining podcasts, and even as one of the most well rehearsed Bitcoin advocates, he recorded this presentation, this 3-minute presentation, 20 times, just so that he could get it dialed in to the standards that he thought it should be. And obviously this is directed toward Microsoft, but this is really a gift for all of us and any other company who is a little curious about Bitcoin. So it's incredible to see him dial it in such a perfect, succinct 3-minute presentation.
Yeah, there's so many incredible talking points in there, and for those that maybe haven't checked it out yet, go watch the presentation. There's a lot of slides that he goes through, which I think even the slides are even better than his actual speech. There's so much good information in there, and there was one slide in particular. I mean, at the end of the day, right? Shareholders want more money, right? That's why they're buying Microsoft stock, because they want to earn more money. And there's like some direct comparisons in there on Microsoft's performance, stock performance versus MicroStrategy's stock performance. And, despite Microsoft being a much, much bigger, much, more successful company, right? In terms of revenue, they earn so much more than MicroStrategy because they're such a much larger company than MicroStrategy is. But despite that, MicroStrategy's stock has surged so much more than Microsoft because of this strategy. So, at the end of the day, shareholders want to earn more money. And this is a really great way of doing that, right? To add Bitcoin to your balance sheet to help offset some of those costs and to grow. And huge, highly recommend going and watching that for those that haven't taken a look at it yet. And I did want to mention as well that it's a really short, it's only 3 minutes. And that's not because like they didn't want to give him the time of day or anything like that. I guess there's some sort of regulatory reason why it needed to be kind of capped to that short of a time. So wanted to mention that as well. I saw somebody mention that and it made sense to me. And I was a little curious why it was only 3 minutes and maybe not more. So that made sense.
Kate, you mentioned that now MicroStrategy holds 402,000 BTC roughly. So that's roughly 1.9% of the total Bitcoin supply of the 21 million. So I think, you mentioned Polymarket. I think maybe the bet would be at what day and time of day will MicroStrategy hold 2% of the... That'd be the bet. I mean, and it could happen next week. It could happen monthly. The rate that they buy Bitcoin is crazy. But that's another question. Like, do they have too much Bitcoin? Can anyone have too much Bitcoin?
I don't know. I definitely don't think so, but I'm not nearly close to that much Bitcoin.
Yeah, I think like there's a US dollar, price risk of somebody holding that much, right? Because if they choose to sell all of it, if something should happen, in the future where they needed to sell it, obviously that's going to really dump the market. But there's no risk from a Bitcoin network standpoint in terms of somebody holding a large amount of BTC, the asset. So it might dump our bags, but the network will continue on.
Good take, Brandon. Good take.
All right. Our next story is a huge privacy win. So the US has unbanned Tornado Cash, which is a huge win. So this is a reversal and a decision from an earlier federal court ruling. And it basically restores Americans' ability to use this privacy-focused protocol, Tornado Cash. So the court found that open source, immutable smart contracts are not property. And so therefore they fall outside the Treasury's authority. And they're getting rid of government overreach on this one. This is because it's an open source, decentralized protocol. And so it can't be owned or controlled by any individual or entity. And so I'm going to pin a thread. This is a great thread from Paul Grewal of Coinbase. And he's basically saying that like nobody wants criminals to use crypto protocols, but it's just unfortunately like a side effect or a consequence. But you shouldn't regulate or kind of like dictate a whole industry based on like a very, very, very small portion of users and bad actors. And I think so. We shared a thread, a holiday thread about some like myths on Bitcoin, and one of them is like Bitcoin is used for criminals, and it's like such a small percentage. I think like 0.35 or like 0.25% of transactions are linked to criminal activity. So yeah, this was a huge win.
Yeah, huge win. The Tornado Cash was basically sanctioned. It was just a really monumental thing when it happened a few years ago in the US. So the fact that the sort of ban has been lifted is huge. And I posted about it on an internal channel, and I got some sort of legal corrections that this doesn't mean that Tornado Cash is approved for use in the US. It is just unbanned. So there's a kind of a legal, I guess, thing there on how how it works. So it's not sort of an approval that this is okay. It's just the fact that this was sort of an overreach, and just because there's not a specific, it's just it's code, right? It's just kind of a smart contract that is immutable. There was kind of mention also that the fact that it is sort of an immutable smart contract, it's not something that can be sort of changed. It's on there and it kind of lives on there forever. So it's not something that can be, fixed necessarily, right? So therefore, it can't be kind of shut down. Was also kind of an interesting point. So huge win for privacy. I think it's just going to have, I mean, not just privacy as well, but just smart contracts in general. I think it really is going to open the door. Like this case the fact that it was unbanned, opens up a lot of new use cases potentially for more smart contract functionality in the future, for more people to build things, powered by smart contracts without fear of getting, reprimanded as harshly, I guess. So I think it's gonna, we're gonna continue to sort of see the lasting impacts from this as time goes on. But huge news that happened last week.
And maybe in some not so good news, we'll go to Sean's neck of the woods in France. So they're shaking up their tax policies a little bit, and they're now putting Bitcoin in the chopping block. So French government is expanding taxes on unproductive wealth, as they call it, which includes assets like yachts, private jets, luxury cars, and it's now going to cover Bitcoin holdings. I think the rationale behind this is that these assets don't generate economic activity or cash flow, and so should face higher taxes. But obviously, people are warning that this would heavily impact Bitcoin investors and deter innovation in France's crypto industry.
Well, yeah, speaking as the resident expert on all things France here, I can say that it hasn't passed. This isn't a law yet. It's a proposal. So my gosh, they need to get with it quick and remove it from this potential bill. But yeah, like you said, it would be a proposed unrealized gains, right? So if you don't sell, it's not realized, and when you do sell it, then it's realized, and then you have to pay capital gains on it. And treating this as taxing when it's unrealized, I mean, how ridiculous is that? We've been having a similar conversation in the States. I mean, that was proposed a couple months ago. That was even a part of the presidential debate for a little bit, and I think it, dissipated pretty quick from the conversation because it's rather absurd. But yeah, the goal here is as part of a broader effort to replace the real estate wealth tax with this, like you said, the unproductive wealth tax, which is all the assets that you said, real estate and luxury goods. So it's kind of ridiculous. But personally, I really like living here in France, and I want to stay here. So I hope that they don't actually make this a law. That would be a move in the wrong direction.
Yeah, it's pretty dumb, but unproductive to who, right? You could argue very, very easily that Bitcoin is quite productive and can be quite productive. So that's literally what we're all building, is trying to make Bitcoin more productive. So the fact that, some are calling it an unproductive asset is pretty funny to me.
Yeah. Sometimes when something so absurd is proposed, you get so much more eyes and voices on the issue, and more people coming to be like, wait, this is nonsense. We can't move forward with this. So yeah, we'll see what happens with that. We'll keep you updated, but yeah. On the US side of the front, Trump has appointed David Sachs as the new AI and crypto czar. So that's pretty exciting. He's a notable venture capitalist, former PayPal executive, and his role is going to be guiding US policy in the fields of AI, crypto, and really boosting innovation and strengthening American leadership in this industry. So that's pretty exciting. He's been in crypto for a while. I think he's more well-rounded than just Bitcoin, it seems. I know that he has mentioned Solana a lot, but it seems at least he's very knowledgeable about crypto.
Yeah, I haven't really. David has the All In podcast that he hosts with a few of the guys over there, like Jason and Chamath and some of the other folks. I haven't really listened to that podcast or consumed a lot of his content, but he has been in kind of in crypto, kind of in this industry for a while. Obviously, coming from a PayPal executive, he very closely understands peer-to-peer payments and just that whole need for a better system. And he advocated for this intersection of AI and crypto that we've been talking about a lot lately. There was this tweet that I saw from him from 2017 saying micropayments never caught on with humans, but they work great for machines. Cryptocurrencies are how AIs will pay each other. So this is something that he's been thinking about for a really long time that a lot of people are talking about now. And I think it's a, huge win for something like stablecoins in particular. I think, we're going to see a lot of hopefully good clarity around stablecoins. And Kate, as you said, I don't think it's necessarily like a Bitcoin only thing, but I think that's fine. The entire industry needs this clarity, and we need more use cases, right? So I think it's not something where we want to like only provide clarity on Bitcoin, right, and let others kind of suffer. Like we want to provide clarity for the entire industry and kind of let capitalism and the market do its thing to pick what the winners are. So I think it's positive, and we'll see how it plays out, I guess, starting next year.
Yeah, I also like how it's AI as well. Like it's kind of obviously they're separate, but there's so much intertwined that I think it's good to have them both on the agenda like that.
Yeah, I think we were thinking when we talked about this potential appointing a few weeks ago on who it might be. I think we were thinking a little too narrow in terms of like somebody that was like only focused on like Bitcoin or only focused on crypto. So I agree. I think it's super interesting that they're sort of combining it, AI and crypto, and having it kind of just be focused on just these new innovations that are happening and trying to make sure that the US kind of maintains a lead in these new big industries that are starting up.
Yeah, they run parallel with each other too on an energy usage spectrum, as well as interoperability, right? Where you have AIs paying each other with micropayments. There was a really great Leather Lounge episode with AI BTC Dev and WoBuddy and Publius because they have a stacks-based AI that is in development, and they're doing a lot, and especially with the aforementioned sBTC getting unlocked very soon, we're going to see a lot of functionality around AI being able to make these micropayments on Bitcoin.
Pretty cool. For our last little segment, Sean, I would love to have you take it away. I'm really excited to hear about the art awards in Miami.
Yeah. Well, I always love to bring it back to art. And I know mostly like the quote unquote most relevant news around Bitcoin is typically around like the number, the price, and political adoption and companies putting it on the balance sheet and things like that. But art is a very valuable use case too. And you can argue that one of the things that took Bitcoin out of the bear market, at least for a while, as far as driving enthusiasm and market and on-chain activity, was art, was ordinals. And this week, it was yesterday, at the first ever Bitcoin Art Award ceremony during Rising Miami, Gamma.io announced the winners. And so they had 4 categories, and the winners were OXFAR for Bitcoin Artist of the Year. Bitcoin Collection of the Year went to Pizza Ninjas, which I know Brandon likes to rock as a PFP. And Bitcoin Innovation Award went to Autograph. And then the Genesis Release of the Year went to Ryan Koopmans. So just a huge shout out to those artists and Pizza Ninjas, because there's innovation happening everywhere. And you just look at what's happening with the attention economy. Not some people might be interested in MicroStrategy buying more Bitcoin because the number's going to go up. But there's a lot more that you can do building on Bitcoin, especially when it comes to art and enthusiasm and community building. So I always love to shout out Gamma.io for supporting artists and enabling such a thriving economy around art on Bitcoin.
Yeah, shout out to Gamma. We're going to be doing some fun things with them soon. So stay tuned there. Really cool, to see some familiar faces as winners. We had Far actually featured on one of our blog posts about a year ago. We interviewed him for a blog post talking about, for those that don't know, Far is, well, he's created many things, but he is most probably famous for creating Taproot Wizards and Quantum Cats and all the things that are happening over there in the Wizards. But he also has some really cool collections on his own, some very cool generative art, some very cool 3D art, very well-rounded and respected person. So shout out to Far, obviously the Pizza Ninjas. I see some fellow ninjas in the audience as well listening. So thank you guys for tuning in. And yeah, it's very cool to see more stuff. Yeah, from Autograph and Ryan Koopmans and yeah, very, very exciting stuff. We love celebrating all the artists and builders in our space.
Love it. Well, that just about wraps up our show. I don't know if there's any questions from our audience. If you have any, now's the time to ask. But wow, what a great couple weeks for Bitcoin it's been. And next week is going to be a great week to be following Leather. That's all I can say.
Absolutely. Yeah. Stay tuned. Follow Leather. Turn your notifications on. Every single post is going to be a banger that is going to be worth your time and effort to pay attention to. So yeah, we're very excited for 12 Days of Leather. It's going to be so much fun. So much work that has gone into this campaign. So we're incredibly excited. Wanted to give a shout out to Kramer Duck here, who in the replies talked about Great Alpha. I said I'm bullish on more traditional plays, public companies that are getting into Bitcoin, and we certainly are as well. Thanks so much for tuning in, and thank you to everybody for tuning in. I see some more familiar faces down there in the audience right now. We shouted out 300 earlier. I see Algorithm down there. Who else is here? Got Gordon down there. Shaylee obviously needs no introduction. So a lot of friends in the audience. Thank you everybody for tuning in. We do the show every Friday. We skipped last week because of Thanksgiving, but normally we do it every Friday, where we recap all the events of the week and talk about everything that's good for Bitcoin. So thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. And yeah, Sean or Kate, I guess I can throw it back to you if you had anything final that you wanted to say.
Yeah, next Tuesday we're gonna do a Stacks meme coins episode, so definitely check in for that one because meme coins are definitely trending right now. One thing that we forgot to mention during the show was, yes, Bitcoin price is going up, but actually Bitcoin dominance is going down a lot. Like there's a lot of money coming in, but a lot of speculative plays. There's a lot of gambling happening right now in the casino. So we're going to talk about meme coins and the various different use cases. And if you're anti-meme coin, you may think differently at the end of the show.
Excited to find out.
Good teaser.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for being here and joining Good for Bitcoin. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening. We record Good for Bitcoin live every Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time on X. Please follow us at Trust Machines Co. if you would like to listen and engage with us live. Visit us at trustmachines.co for all the latest Bitcoin news. We'll see you next week.